Oh, welcome. I hope you're feeling virtually not alone. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I don't know if anybody's even listening right now. Like these voices in the background makes them feel virtually not alone. You know? Your host, General Griswold Gaius, member of the First Blood Regression Protocol and a member of the Fraternal Regiment embodying narcissistic sociopathy. On behalf of the Sacred Order of Foolish Transparency, as with the film, we have some all-stars in the hive mind today. Hive mind today. Hive mind today. Hive mind today. Hive mind today.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's happening, guys. It's Kale Zelden and Grimgriz. LARPgate Year 4, the Fringe Nexus Cafe. The General and the Gentleman, the first of LARPgate Year 4's Fringes. You know how we do the Fringe things. Yes, Red Pill. This is live, and you're here. And McMo is very exited for this one. I'm going to have to give everybody savings throws very shortly, but it occurred to me I should be using the Blue Church deck for this, and it's not here. Well, it's here, but it's not here. So have this. Okay, all right. Just in case you guys have doubts about me, proof that he's here hostage. There he is. But before I let him say anything to you, you're gonna need your savings throws because as you know, you swim in mind control. It's made of words, and words are magic. And the situation we have here is this person we have on board teaches literature. And literature is like a book, but it's super longer and smarter because it's like really powerful magic up in there. Sometimes it contains a summum bonum, as I hope we'll discuss. So you're going to need your savings throws against it. The card for the show, however, is that one. Oh, great. Great. We call that the red Joker. The other one looks a little different. What do you know?
You're crushing me, people. You're crushing me. I'm big, but I'm not that big.
All right. So here you go. As you know, you get a savings throw. Survival social, wisdom, or heart are your choices. You choose. I roll. If it's over 10, you take half damage. Under 10, you take full damage. But remember, Embody, we want what's best for you. Survival, social, wisdom, or heart. Which one you going with, Kale?
Survival.
All right. Survival, social, wisdom, or heart. Oh, look at that, ladies and gentlemen. Kale rocking it in with one of those nat 20s.
Talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And on socialists, on the other hand, this is not the place for you. That is a natural one. The bonuses do not apply. You get bonuses for talking in the Hive Mind chat, etc., etc. Sophists, the lovers of wisdom, deucing it today. Your bonuses do apply. You might still make it. Hard folks, Prime 19 for you. Prime 19 and Indigo kids. Oh, you would. You got the 9 again today. Congratulations for your savings throws, and soon coming, me and Kale will go. But first, something he needs to see if he hasn't.
Light up each other. Light up each other.
Go with Bishop Barron's fancy hit, Some Mumbonum.
That logo is called The Meaning of Music.
Can I just jump in? The mind and the intelligible form light up each other. Light up each other. Each one illumines the other. So the objectively valuable addresses me. It rearranges me. It rearranges me. It's turned me upside down. What was the first song that rocked your world, changed you, that rearranged your consciousness? Like a Rolling Stone. Rock my world. Rock my world. Rock my world. Summum bonum. It's like summum bonum. It's like, yeah, there's a summum bonum. Rock my world. Summum bonum. It's like, it really gets interesting. It's like summum bonum is this rock my world. It rearranges me. It's summum bonum breaking into my reluctant and recalcitrant consciousness. Summum bonum, bring it to the religious level. It's not you who've chosen me, it's I who've chosen you. And it's not you who've chosen me, it's I who've chosen you. And it's summum bonum, not you who've chosen me. Summum bonum, revelation. Summum revelation. Stunning objectivity, the good, confronts us, changes us, and it doesn't let us go. And stunning objectivity, the good, confronts us, changes us, and it doesn't let us go. And light up each other. Light up each other. Doesn't let us go. And light up each other. Summum bonum. Light up each other. Revelation. It's turned me upside down. What was the first song that rocked your world? Rocked your world. Summum bonum. It's like summum bonum. It's like, yeah, there's a summum bonum. Rock my world. Summum bonum. It's like, it really gets interesting. Revelation is the ultimate expression of that. Revelation is the ultimate expression of that. Revelation is the ultimate expression of that.
So, anyways, I'm going to leave it at that.
You muted yourself, Grim.
Congratulations, you've just earned +4 to next stream savings throws.
Excellent.
Welcome. This is what it's like. Oh, let me flash the thumbnail one more time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the beginning of the General and the Gentleman Fringe Nexus Cafe. The Fringe encounters are the first time, and this is not our first time. This is our second rodeo, as it were. Right. Your situation has changed somewhat, but you remain a teacher of this literature, do you not?
I do remain a teacher of the literature. Yes, in fact, I was just literating my kids about 35 minutes ago. So good day, good day.
And you're taking them to Dante's Inferno, as I understand from the X Twitter.
That's right. Yeah, we're about 2/3 done, so we're really getting into the bowels, as it were, literally and figuratively of hell. So yeah, it's good stuff. I think the kids are liking
the
it.
bowels of hell, and then you come here. How appropriate.
Well, here we go.
So I prepped you by saying, hey man, I want to talk Defense Against the Dark Arts.
Yep.
And so let's walk anybody new to the concept through it. It's ripped off of Harry Potter, and that's a book series available, audiobook, and a movie series now, penned by some J.K. Rowling lady.
Some person.
And in that thing, there's a bunch of kids going to a magic school.
Right.
And because they're learning magic, they got it in them. They can speak words, and words are magic. And so they're going to this school, but it gets all corrupted by this corruption is corrupting. And so they're supposed to be learning this thing called Defense Against the Dark Arts for when spells on them are cast, so they can defend themselves. But they're not being reliably taught. And as such, they find this place called the Room of Requirement and begin to learn together those things. And that's that's what I feel this best be of service by becoming.
Yeah.
And so there's the concept, and you agree enough to be prepped with the notion, hey, let's do some Defense Against the Dark Arts stuff. So
yeah, I remember the first time hearing you say that, you said something like, oh, we should deal with canon, right? Talk about the canon of a Defensive Against the Dark Arts thing. And if memory serves, I think you were talking with Paul about this in the relationship to sort of your insight on Set, right? That all of us were raised by Set. And I think you were riffing on sort of Peterson sort of riffing on Set and being pulled apart and all that kind of stuff. So as soon as you said it, this is now about a year or maybe more ago, I immediately had a kind of okay, I get what Grim's doing here, and it made a lot of sense for me. Both kind of making sense out of what I do with my kids, my students in classroom, but also as a sort of a concept that we are kind of gravitating toward this little corner as a way of kind of trying to sort of cast Defense Against the Dark Art spells from sort of what we find ourselves surrounded in and by.
I think I was reflecting, but knowing that we were going to have this talk, I was reflecting upon it a little bit, and it occurred to me that it's like we, at least some part of us, has come to grips with the fact that we're not going to be able to process the amount of information that we now have access to. And once that part kicks in, you have to look around for people you trust. And I guess that we've been drawn together makes us is a foundational, hey, I'm in a flotilla with these guys, I might as well start trusting them.
Yeah. Right. And I think that it's funny you bring up explicitly, the whole Harry Potter thing, and the position, the Defense Against the Dark Arts position is there's a lot of throughput there, right? I mean, every year there's a new person, because the Defense Against the Dark Arts person, for a variety of reasons, gets either kicked out or gets taken up or eaten or what have you, right? So there is I guess what I appreciate about the image is that there is kind of a, for all of our joking, there is a real danger in so much of this. And even as I think about the way that the Defense Against the Dark Arts plays out in the books, there's an unwillingness on the part of the adults, especially the adults who are in charge, to acknowledge that the dark arts are even like a thing that you need to worry about. And so there's this sort of unwillingness to face you know, again, in the story, it's like he who must not be named couldn't possibly return. He's dead, dead, dead. Right. But even more so, even in the face of actual evidence, in the face of actual, you know, manifestations of real malignant evil, they still find themselves wanting a kind of curated world in which they don't even have to worry about it. It's almost like the Defense Against the Dark Arts class was a kind of it's like a legacy from like the before times where, you know, we needed this stuff before, but now like we're past all this sort of stuff. And so I find us in a similar kind of wisdomless place when it comes to that. I don't know if that resonates with how you see things.
Yeah, it's like because we're no longer isolated from all this information, we become able to see the layer cake of the kayfabe.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we figure out where we're in it, we desire to do things about that. I wanted to bring up this because there's some man on the planet named Andrew who says, you announced on the X Twitter, the Baal bird, as I used to call it.
Yes.
That you were going live with me today around our time, and it was a preamble, which I looked up, and that means introduction to.
Yes.
And this Andrew fellow says, I hope you make more sense than he usually does. And as such, it behooves me to try and make some sense, and maybe you can help if I'm not. So this the Voldemort is dead spell. Okay, well first let me explain why I lean so hard into popular culture memetics.
Yeah.
And that's based on an episode of Star Trek, lovingly known as Darmok and Tanagra, where they run into an alien species who can only communicate through their historical stories. Shaka, when the walls fell, is symbolic for when Picard finally understands what's going on. And really, like, we were like, as the children of Set, we have all these mythological programs and references. And if we can tie those together, we can communicate with those fandoms by using their metaphors, similarly the way that Picard communicated with Homeboy in that episode.
That's right. So I think that's a real insight, though. But just to press pause on that, I think, you know, and it reminds me of the kind of sort of pithy ish wisdom that you see in Lewis do in Screw Tape Letters, right? You know, that I think what you're hitting on is that even Set, right? And if I understand, help me out here. I think what you mean by that is like we were literally, you and I are a certain generation. We were raised by the television set. Right, that's the sort of
to increase like as the years went on, the amount that the raising was by Set got deeper.
Right. So therefore, but even Set develops its own kind of mythology and pattern repetition, right? So that even for those of us who were, let's say that you were sort of radically raised by Set, even within, you know, as the seasons progress and the decades progress, there becomes a kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better, like a canon of popular television, you know, that can begin to make sense within itself. But I think what I found out when I started doing my own deep dive into old books is that, wait, you know, this stuff that I was raised on actually has antecedents and patterns that not only, you know, that predate Set, right? And so that it's a weird thing that happened with us, right? Because Set can kind of, it's all encompassing. It's obviously a lot easier to watch Set than it is to read old books. But even in doing that, you know, you're still, you actually have a kind of access backwards to the before times. And so I think your illumination or in invocation, I think it's probably the better word I would think of, your invocation of all of these memes, I think is, especially in this little corner, is a way of making a kind of connection between differing meme plexes or something like that.
Excellent. Yeah, like other flotillas, fandoms, clusters of interest and
right. And for me, I will say, you know, so I did the entirety of my education, my formal education, pre-internet. Like I got my first email address the in the weeks before I turned in my master's thesis, right? So like all of my formal education was pre internet, right? So that's kind of that next iteration up. And so I didn't read something like Harry Potter until I think I was in my late 20s when I read it. I read the first one, and I was one of those people who like did not read it on purpose for a long time because I just thought, oh, this is like kids crap. And then all the sort of the school moms like at my school loved it. They thought, oh, it's so great. And so there's like, no way I'm going to read that. Anyway, I eventually got over myself and read it. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. She's doing something she's doing an ancient thing in a new idiom. And so for me, I always read Harry Potter with all of that kind of old book baggage in my head. So you can see like right away, what she's doing with and what she's playing with. Not sure where I was going with that. Sorry.
All right. Well, I did recall I was steering toward the Children of Set issue
Yes.
and trying to explain that more clearly.
Right.
And okay, so I begin it with the War of the Worlds,
Yeah.
in which whether or not the actual human beings were convinced and fooled by a radio broadcast that aliens were attacking, afterward, the notion that the human beings were so foolish and convinced was sold to the public.
Yeah.
And then the newscaster era began as television and set came onto the scene. And the chief spell that the newscaster cast is the same as the Voldemort is dead spell.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's everything is there's lots of horrible stuff, but we have it under control. Just keep doing what you're doing. And that worked because there was no, the only real intercommunication aside from that was people's letters to each other.
Right.
The only counter narrative, but that was up until then the dominant narrative was reinforced via the churches. And then as television sets became, worship of sets became normalized, and that's the chief function of set, is to normalize various behaviors in the culture. I remember like Will and Grace, for example, was a big
Huge.
point of normalization.
Huge, absolutely massive. Way underrated.
And that Joey from Friends guy normalizing masturbation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like if you go back into, there's like ads and stuff from the 30s I've seen tweeted by that show like masturbation as a degeneracy. And that got lost. The fact that we had access to porn was more important than porn as a weapon.
Right.
That's and these things, but now we're this deep in it, but some of us realize we're in it, and
yeah. Right.
So,
right. Whether you want to acknowledge it out loud or not, we're in it, and it's really important, to use the we. Every now and again, I get on the Twitter and I will say like, we're lost, we're a mess, something, I'll use a we, right? And I'm doing that, and then people are like, well, I'm fine, like I don't do that sort of stuff, and I'm like, well, okay, I get it, but the reason why I'm using the we is that we, like, it's all happening to us, whether you want to acknowledge that there's an us or a we in the first place. Like it's happening to us. I mean, and it's hard for me to avoid that truth because I teach kids, right? And so, I'm like in charge of watching kids during the day, so it's, if I were being cynical, and I'm not a cynical person, but if I were being cynical, I'm just a sort of a glorified, sort of leveled up babysitter. At least that's how some people conceive of it. But it's, so at any rate, I get to notice a lot of stuff, and one of the things that you notice is that the kids, the kids, are absolutely swimming in it.
And it in this sentence
It is. I mean, it could be anything. I mean, we could talk about pornography. We could talk about masturbation. We could talk about love is love. But all of the memes, right? All the stuff that, I can get off. I can go off and be like, oh, well, like this is stupid because of X, and no, this is wrong because of Y. I can kind of play that intellectual game, but it's like all precognitive. It's all pre, in a way. It's like, I remember in graduate school, there was this expression that the postmodernists would always use, like something is always already happening. Right. And I used, and you could kind of make fun of it, like the 90th time you see a philosopher cart this sort of thing out. But I think what I've learned in this little corner, is that, and through Peterson and all these kinds of things, is that, we experience culture as always already happening, right? And so, my kids, my students experience, all of these things that you and I might look at as novel developments, right? But they're experiencing them as always already on, like it's just there.
That's their first draft.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's exactly right. It's already there. And, so I see a lot of pretend on the part of adults as to what our kids are swimming in.
Well, if I'm okay with what they're swimming in, then it's easier for me to spend time on my phone.
Right. Well, that's
that's for me. It's the truly fascinating bit is we're, as far as we know, setting precedent as far as the species being exposed to global communication. And you think of it along the lines of back in the day, the real world was defined by the people around you.
Yeah.
And so like you could aspire to be the best of whatever you do around there. Mm-hmm. But once set came in, and the global awareness began, then like living your life on a farm became weighed against all the possible opportunities broadcast to you. Like you could be doing this instead.
Well, and I remember that for me, myself, like personally, I grew up in a kind of sleepy suburban town, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I remember, like, the Oracle showing up once a month. You'd go on down to the record store and you'd buy like Rolling Stone magazine. And like it was a node or a portal, into a whole world that was cooler, sexier, more fun. It was all these things that Baton Rouge, my suburban Baton Rouge life was not, right? And so like that idea is an existing one, right? But the hyper immersion maybe is sort of at least it's making me see it a little bit differently now. I don't know if you see it differently.
I have these moments where I remember what it was like before the net was in my head, like the physical sensation of it. And
I don't think I do. That's interesting. I don't think I have a memory of it.
Well, I think you still get outside more.
Okay. It's true. I do.
There's so this notion that I started with the sunum bonum.
Yep.
I think those come through literature quite often. Like if you can read it right, Dune will do it to you for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is accurate because I've never personally read it, but I understand that it's somewhere in like the Brothers Karamazov or whatnot. There's this part where they finally like, dude, can we just talk like we're stupid or something? Is that scene in that book or am I
no, you're right. Yeah.
What's it? Can you tell me about that scene?
I'm trying to remember the exact context. I mean, it's I'm not going to be able to invoke it.
You don't have the quote.
I'm not going to be able to tell the story right. But what are you getting at, Grim?
Like, I'd like to be able to summon that, invoke it, as you said, into a discussion. That, like, okay, like you're a teacher, sure, and I'm a guy living in a basement, sure. But let's take all that off and just talk about what's going on in our world for a minute, and what we do from here. Because
I that's funny. I was on my morning jog this morning, and I was thinking about like the net and and now AI. And I was thinking about our phones, and I was thinking about what has been seeded, like as in to seed, like the ground, like what has been seeded without even us paying attention, right? And it, so we all carry around, a Horcrux like in our pockets. Not really a Horcrux, but more like a portal, right? Like we all have this thing, and
Definitely not like a Horcrux.
right, yeah. Sorry, I actually, the Horcrux is a different idea I had this morning, but anyway, but it's like it's a portal, and it seems to me that it has not yet been revealed what it's going to be used for, right? While we like, there's this whole infrastructure that has been built out, right? And maybe it's as trite and as obvious as the World Wide Web, meme, but it's right now we use it for, tracking our this and, listening to this podcast, or like we're using it for all these sort of whatever.
Yeah, but we're like 4 days away from them turning off your money for being on this show.
Well, right. That right. No, and I but even perhaps more profound than that, and that's certainly profound. We don't know what it's going to be used to do to us, right? I
have plenty of ideas.
Well, me too. I mean, like my kids, they're on their phones a lot, like even more than me, and I'm a pretty deep, like I'm sadly a pretty heavy user, and but the credulousness with which they allow themselves to be informed by is remarkable.
What's credulous?
Like they believe it, right? So like like something shows up on this thing, and it's like they believe it, like in a way that I could have a book, and we can be going through a passage, and we're reading the passage, and they're still allowed a kind of differentiation between themselves and the book, right? So Dante's describing X, Y, and Z. Okay, like fine, like whatever. But like when it shows up on their device, it's like it has this next level authority. But it's my sense is that they've been conditioned into seeing this as more relevant, than this.
I think yes, but there's also a mechanic since we have a slight age difference that I wanted to examine with you, and that is how VCRs destroyed my respect for the elder generation.
Oh, dude, I use this in class. I use this all the time. I use this exact thing. I was like, I said, I tell my kids, like the joke that I used to always make is that, we all thought we were smarter and better than our parents because we learned how to program a VCR. And they're like, wait, what's a VCR? Like they don't even get the reference anymore. Right. Mm-hmm. But like my mom, God bless her, very intelligent, well-read woman, like still uses the clicker, and she does one of these things. She's like, when she tries to change the channel, on her TV set. So there's this notion. And so for me, like when I teach my class, like that is the first lecture that I give in the first week of school, is that, we are not better, smarter, more wise, more intelligent than Dante because we have an iPhone, right? But it really is their kind of default assumption. So I think your insight is exactly right, that when we learned how to program a VCR and our parents didn't know how to, like it was sort of done, like the Technium one.
It's we have to undo it. This is the fall inversion season, so I there's this intergenerational ratcheting, or whatever the fancy word for the corner is. I was curious, since for the age difference again, if you bore more witness to the atomization and or nuking of the family. Like, was the nuclear family a novel concept? Because I don't know, because I wasn't around, but it's like I had the privilege of growing up with my great grandfather next door, and so all his kids would come by and whatnot, and then at the age of 9, that ended.
You went to Hawaii, right?
Yeah, Yeah.
Yep.
And so it's like, and that feels like nobody has that anymore. And I don't know if
Yeah.
that's true or not, but it seems like it's like the cults go after the isolated people,
Mhm.
and our
Mhm.
policies and institutions have been seemingly isolating us into manageable single units
Mhm.
to the best of their capacity,
Yeah.
and making us more and more isolated. And is that accurate? Was family a bigger thing, and it was nuked, or am I just
So
that's me off the
just
rails?
like, so I'm 50, and so the world, um I'm sure people in the audience have seen Stranger Things, and so those group of friends, like those 4 guys, 5 guys, whatever it is, they were by school year a year older than me, right? So so like that's like my childhood, that. And for me, it was very similar. I lived in a kind of a neighborhood, a suburban neighborhood, and so therefore I did not live, next door to my grandparents. So I lived in that kind of hyper nuclear family world, and for the most part, I mean, I can name on one hand, the number of friends whose moms and dads had divorced, right? So like there was still a kind of
That was
residue.
just starting.
Yeah, right.
That
No, that's a good, and it was still like one of those things I remember, like my mom and dad, being like, oh, like such and such, it's a shame, they're getting a divorce, and it was literally remarkable. It was not new, like people had gotten divorced, of course, but like it was
it was as if a tragedy had struck their family.
absolutely, yeah. This was like, oh, and so yeah, that was sort of you know that was the world that I was growing up in. So, if no fault divorce goes through in, I think, California at 76, I think the rest of the country by 1980, no fault divorce was the thing, was the rule of the land. And so then you once that law changes, I think, there was zero friction left to keep people married in that way, minus a belief structure. But as we know, the belief structures are hardly a hedge against that.
But communities seem to be. Oh, wait. No, because those are now divided. Everybody's still in their own cell.
Right. So we've even learned how to isolate community. We've even learned how to atomize a community. Right. So it's not, it's not geographical. That's for darn sure. But it's sort of this other
So
thing.
then, therefore, I must ask: Is there something to this virtually not alone bubble that we're in? Like, I'm in my cell, you're in your cell, we're all in our cells together. Is there a similar mechanic to whenever 2 or 3 gather in my name, I am with you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think so, but even that idea, whether 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there's a verticality to that horizontal, like that there's this sense that, it's interdimensional already. Whereas in the world that I grew up in the world that you grew up in, that verticality is being quickly, shrunk down to the horizon. So that, I mean, what does that even mean? I mean, like, like right now, if you say to a bunch of, guileless Christians, that where the 2 or 3 are gathered, I mean, you're like, it would be so easy to knock them off the cliff on that. It's like, well, what does that even mean? Like, what are you talking about? I can't see. I mean, it's like, yeah, anyway, I don't want to go off on that too much, but I just think it's that's part of this surrounding thing, right? That you're talking about, it's part of their prior world. It's already part of their nested world, that everything's flat. So all the language, the words are like, oh, that's cute, but it's not a lived reality.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like it's hard for me to imagine being conditioned up without the verticality.
Right. Well, so where did you get your verticality from? Your grandpa?
I don't know. There was
Video games? I mean, like seriously, I'm asking, like, because you have a sense of it, obviously.
it was how bad shit hurt. Like in here,
pain's real. Yeah.
it's like but it wasn't. It was like when the physical pain it became manifest from the emotional wound.
Yeah.
That the like whatever the emotional self is somehow more. That's when it became I'm a guy riding around in the vehicle.
Right, like you're way more. Right, you're way more than this stuff.
And I don't know what else, but
yeah.
but there's a depth.
Yeah.
I saw it as a depth, not a vertic. Like verticality also means down.
No, it's true. Right? No, it's true because it but that's like that's. But I always think about the down, right, and the down, and perhaps because I'm teaching Dante right now, Dante wakes up in the woods and he wants to go up. I mean, he sees the hill and he sees the light shining on the hill that he wants to go to, but he can't go there. He's blocked, right? And so Virgil sort of swoops in and says, well, yeah, I know you want to go up, but we kind of have to go down first, right? And he's like, why would I want to do that? He's like, trust me. And so he does because he's Virgil, right? And for Dante, it's kind of like his idol, and so he goes down. So I think there's a, so why do you go down? Like, and you think of all the old stories, like why does the hero always have to go down? Why does he have to go to the underworld? And, in every story worth its salt has a version of it, whether it's a literal place or an emotional place or what have you. But like every story, the hero has to.
Can I guess?
Yeah, please. Let's play class. Why?
I think that's because, like, you have to realize how much status quo is worth fighting for.
Why does going to the underworld show you that?
Because it's the alternative to your victory. You're like the heroic. It's like Peterson's got that the hell behind you. Something for you got to know what hell looks like before you start running from it and moving away for it.
Yeah,
from it.
Right. So it's counterintuitive, right? And you talk about the VCR, right? You talk about the this sort of generational divide. That how what can my mom possibly have to share with me? She doesn't even know how to program the VCR, right? And so for me, when you go underground, when you go to the underneath, when you go to no, but that's this is what I'm obsessed with, right? I mean, it's like that you go there because that's where dead people live, like and like it's dead people stripped of the veneer of status, stripped of the veneer of all of the things that we busy ourselves in the waking living world, right? And so that's where like true things reside, and it's where like it's all covered. Like it's covered by the earth. Like it's covered. You can't find it, right? And so you have to actually, whatever, go spelunking or, whatever, go mining for this sort of stuff. And I think that's, to me, that's what I found, right? That when I went to the underworld, and for me, the underworld means anything, that's dead. Old books for me was a huge world to go to and to mine, because what I found in going to those old books, is all this stuff that nobody who talks to me, like the newscaster, seems to have any access to. Like you're telling me that the weather's this and the map is red and that this sports team did this and that, the president went to go, to talk about this treaty there. And, they're all talking about this stuff as if that's the most important thing. You watch the news and it's like none of these people are talking about the most important things. They're talking about literally the most superficial things. Now, I know that the economy matters and I know that job reports matter, fine, right? But if you notice it, all of that talk cuts us off from, the most, for me, the most important things. It's wisdom, right? And
you journey people through the underneath on your Substack.
That's right.
The underneath. where you had this lovely piece on Vader, which reads a portion of the following.
Okay.
So Vader, product of the machine and product of the spirit, knows of what he speaks. Spirit trumps machine, and thus he knows the rebels have a chance. What they lack in military material, they make up in belief. Though he is far gone, he knows that the machine has limits. It may grant powers, but it lacks the most vital thing. That's...
Yeah.
You guys can go read that now. It's on his Substack.
I forgot I wrote that. It's actually, I kind of like that. Yeah, wow, that's right. I guess I did say that.
But the notion of sunum bonums and them being buried in great literature works such as Dante, and how they allow you to break and reframe your understanding in ways that you're not going to find on TikTok.
Right.
I feel as though another casualty as growing up children of Set is we've lost initiation rituals unless you're like a Mason or other small subculture. There's none of that, and so it's always been my thing. If I had gotten what set of information, at the age of 14 would have changed significantly, been enough to steer me in a better direction. And I think that in that case, some of the lessons from these literature sunum bonum moments might be those. Can we throw up a quick book list or a list of stories, and then we'll find what books they're in later that you think would be great for folk?
You mean like that everybody should read? You know, that kind of thing?
Yeah, like what stories do you lay on your pupils, they call them?
Yeah.
And what are you hoping they pull out of them? And then so maybe we can at least get that much.
Yeah. So like what I've been doing the last, dozen years or more now, 15 plus years, is, we do Dante, we do Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. We read selections from the Canterbury Tales. We do Shakespeare.
All right, let's stop there. What do you hope they get out of Dante?
So what I want them to get out of Dante is that couple of things, that that what they desire matters. And I mean that very literally, like what you desire manifests. I mean, in the popular lingo of the time, right? But that in life you get what you want. And Dante encounters a bunch of people who didn't know what they actually wanted. And so it is incumbent upon us, because we have an intellect and because we're made in the image and likeness of God. It's this is what I was lecturing about today. Like we need to confront that our desire itself is influenceable and educable, right? And I can learn to want differently. And this is like super counter cultural, right? I mean, the idea that if I were to go into an auditorium right now filled with a bunch of people and say, like what you want is wrong, I would get tarred and feathered and sent into thought prison, because like, what do you mean you can want wrong? And I know that the whole like Ben Shapiro thing, has gotten memed into oblivion, but like this whole like thought feeling thing, like that's actually kind of an important thing to recognize, and that your feelings oftentimes obscure as much as they reveal. And if those feelings are not somehow attached to like your intellect and how you are perceiving and conceiving of a thing, then it can lead to disastrous results, and you can find yourself awake at the age of 30 in a dark wood, and you don't know how you got there. So for me, it's
sounds exciting, though.
Well, you mean being lost in the woods?
This whole emotions obscuring thing. I wanted to throw out that the media we're being exposed to, the level of spells is designed as such.
Yeah,
and so
right.
It's called an amygdala hijack, and the way it works is like your brain has an amount of energy that processes stuff, and it looks like a tree. Essentially, the energy flows up the tree, and all your advanced thinking is on the tips of the branches. And when they rage trigger you with whatever's in that tweet, it pulls all your energy into your fight and flight response in your amygdala, and that pulls it down out of your upper thinking branches of your tree. And I don't know if Dante's Inferno tells you, but you're in 5th generation warfare for your mind. And so you do need to know yourself and know what you actually want. Know yourself well enough to know what you actually want. Otherwise, you will be fed things to want that lead you astray.
Yeah, I would say that one of the hardest things for us to recognize, Dante's like 700 years old, right? And so, he's writing, the story is set in 1300 during Holy Week. And just to sort of put this kind of in perspective, like think about
nobody knows what that means.
1300, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Right. No.
Holy Week.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's true. Right. So it's set. But just think about the years just for a second. That means that by the time Dante
Leonardo da Vinci times,
just before.
Just before Da Vinci. Okay. I've seen movies that can help me place that.
Yeah, right. So think about, that for Dante, he's living in Florence, right? He's born in Florence, which is just north of Rome, right? Christianity is already 1,300 years old, minus a couple of years. Like that's an old, like what is 1,300 years from us? Right? Like, the year, what, 600? Like, what does that even mean to you? I mean, like, what? Like, that's so old, right? And so I think we have this, our mind does this weird thing where, like, after around, I don't know, 1800, it all kind of just collapses into this, like, little thing. Like, was it 1100? Was it 700? Like, I don't know. Like, it's just old shit, right? And so, so it's just like, I don't know. That's one thing. Secondly, Dante and the Florentines, they might not have had cell phones, and they might not have had cars, right? But we fool ourselves if we don't recognize that they were hyper sophisticated and just for like a lack of a better way to say it, like they were just like really bad people. Like we didn't invent sinning, 65 years ago or whatever. Like people did some like really bad, gnarly stuff. Right, the kind of stuff that would even singe the nostrils of the biggest internet troller. I mean, it's like bad stuff. And so I think the first thing that I try to do with the old books portion is like, look, they besides the sort of the superficial things, like we're just like them. We're just like them, and that Dante is growing up in a world that has lost as much as we have. And I just think that's an important part to realize. There's a kind of recency bias that sets in, like we invented all the bad stuff.
Mine was triggered not long ago because somebody sent me a link to a video on YouTube, and I clicked on the video on YouTube, and it was like, this material may be unsafe. This material may contain violence. I clicked through anyway, so I'm on the list now.
Yeah,
but it was about Kent State,
right?
And like the bombings that used to go on in the 70s, and
like
how
real bad shit. I mean, like
it's
wow.
like, and it's like, and it feels like the whole way that like I once read the biography of Harry Houdini, and I think the existence of biographies has put undue pressure on me to try and like have a life worth writing a book about.
Yeah.
And similarly, this whole notion of I just lost it. But the permanent record that exists now that wasn't throughout history and also will be gone immediately if the solar flare knocks out the grid.
That's right.
It's like you guys should probably at least read Lord of the Flies to know what it's going to get like if it gets like that, because that level of humanity is where they give us blinders so we don't have to see it unless we go looking for it, or they did until 4 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, the book to read on that one for me is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I don't usually read new books, but I did read that one when he was still alive. I think he died a year ago. And it's really good. It's a really great book. I think it's Dantean, actually. But it's, you know, there's this beautiful line, like, you know, the fragility of all, the fragility of everything was exposed at last, right? And so there's this thin little veneer of civilization that exists on top of this sort of raging cauldron of awful
Chaos.
Yeah, I mean, like, and that's my worldview.
That's what the flotilla floats upon.
Yeah,
that's what's under the waters.
Yeah.
Let me run some branding, and then I don't know how much time you have left, but I'll let you steer it a little bit. Branding is down here. Oh, okay. Slack says, I hope the most of them can enjoy the moment, and only the real history nerds look back at this. So, Kale, here we are in this little corner. Humanity. Now, see, one of the things that might be confusing for folks is that I think humanity is essentially an automating automaton.
Okay.
Like when we learn a new thing, we do it until it's automatic in us. And I think that fractals up to like you throw humans at it until you can build machines to do it. And that's what's happened, and we no longer need a human labor force, and we're slated for mass population reduction.
You asking me if I agree or disagree, or
no? That's just how I see things, and I'm concerned. What would you, as another human being on this planet with me, say to such?
Yeah, well, I mean, people are basically saying that. I mean, you know, everybody's favorite nihilist, Yuval Noah Harari, I think that's his name. I mean, openly talks about that.
Spokesperson for the WEF.
Yeah,
WEF, you know, the Hegelian dialectic opponent to the ARC program we all love so much.
Yeah, and sort of unabashedly and unironically talks about surplus population. You know, I mean, if you're keeping score at home, like this is the kind of thing that Scrooge talks about in The Christmas Carol, like, you know, unnecessary wastes. I mean, that's, you know, that's how they look at most of us, you know. So, you know, but to offer as a sort of perhaps a winsome counter to this sort of thing is that I do think that the logic of the machine will collapse upon itself. Not that that's good, uh, you know, I like teaching, and I like being able to talk to you on what is this called, StreamYard. Like that's nice, and I love listening to Pastor Paul on my ear pods in the morning when I jog with my dogs. I do. I love all those things, um, but it seems like it's going to fall in upon itself. And so I don't think that those kind
That's
of
one of the risks, right? From the science guys, the analysts of why the universe is so empty, is that civilizations get to a certain point and then collapse. So that's
I remember
potentially an existential threat that we're actually facing.
Oh, for sure. And I remember when, when I was a kid, we'd go to the beach and, you'd make those little sand castles where you like take wet sand and you kind of drip it on top of each other and you try to build this structure. And if you'd go too far up, it would kind of collapse. I think that we play that game a lot with our sophistication, that these sort of hyper sophisticated things just don't have enough root structure for them, to hold itself up. So yeah, maybe that's true. But in the meantime, lots of people can get hurt, right? I mean, I have kids. It's like I'd prefer that they have a world that functions. I'm not sure if they will be 50 and have the kind of basically functioning world that I had as a 50-year-old man. I just don't know. I don't think
Well,
so.
if we do it right, this whole defense against the dark arts notion would train the people that can revivify the people that stick Horus's eye back in Osiris.
Right. I guess my question is that I'm asking you, how gone how deep is the corruption? And I don't mean just like grift and graft. I mean, like, how deep is the corruption to the structure?
It's just like 2% of probably 30,000 people's hearts need to be turned. Just turn a little dial of someone's heart in the right. I think
that's good.
I think though that it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I see the whole thing as like an Othello game between the good guys and the bad guys, and so the chips can flip either side at either moment.
Yeah. Well, I think that's true though, and I like that. I mean, I do think that's true. I mean, we have conversion's real, right? Well, like we see it. Remember again, just to sort of lean on Dante, since that's what we've been talking about. Dante's had a whole career. Like he's had a whole he was a famous love poet in Florence, and he was sort of celebrated for it, and he was involved in politics, and then his whole life gets upended, and he has this like massive radical vertical conversion that compels him to write a work that we're still talking about 700 years later, that still has some kind of like existential relevance to us. Like that's kind of cool.
I don't know why, but this question came in. Anything in your course go over the sanctity of the womb? Like, do you provide anything as some sort of defense against the identify by who you let you trend in our society today?
So if I understand, like
when I was growing up, they said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?"
Right,
and
right,
now
right.
it's who are you going to let have sex with you?
Right.
And so, is there anything in the classics that I don't know, extol the values of not sexually commodifying yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. How would I answer that? I mean, like, where did I come to it? I mean, my instinct. I'm trying to write a book right now about Romeo and Juliet, and I think that the play remains perennially popular for a reason, but I wonder if it's popular for I think there's something embedded in that story that most people kind of gloss over, and I think it has to do with Juliet. I think Juliet is
performing eugenics?
No. It's a tragedy, right? So that's important, to sort of put that on the table. Like her death and Romeo's death is a tragedy, and tragedies are not just sad, right? That there's something profound and almost
Because a beautiful light goes dark.
right. Like there's something profound and nihilistic at the core of this thing, right? That it's not in she's what's so interesting to me. Sorry if I'm going off on a tangent here, but if she's so interesting to me because she's the smartest person in the play, like by a mile, and she's like 15 or 14, right? I mean, she's so young, right? It's like, so she's like pure potency, right? Pure potential, and to Romeo's credit, he can see it, right? And again, they're so young, so then like in a properly functioning world, they should be provided a kind of space with which not only to grow, but also to sort of, just to be little, like to get married and have kids, right? I mean, like there's something, it's just so necessary about that Verona like is not up to the task. And like my read on it is like, we live in Verona, right? We live in a place in which we have forsaken our primary responsibility, which is to provide our Romeos and Juliets the kind of revivifying power of generative love in our world. And so now, what do our Juliets do? They go on OnlyFans, right? What do our Romeos do? They become pickup artists, right?
That's
right?
That's a good one.
But it's real. I mean,
it is, but it strikes to the core. That's why it's good,
right? And
I had this image while you were talking of like it was basically a Fallout 4 desert scenario, a radioactive wasteland.
Yeah.
And there was a white flower growing,
Right.
probably a rose growing out of the cracked ground.
Yeah.
And like the person walking by pulled it out and snuffed it out because like beauty that beautiful doesn't belong here anymore.
Right. Well, you see that same motif. You see the same motif in Wall-E plays with that motif a little bit, but also like in Children of Men. I don't know if you've ever read that, but it's so
it's much like I asked you for a Sunum Bonum literature list. I have one of movies.
Yeah.
And Children of Men is definitely
absolutely
way up there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that same kind of thing. What I love about that movie so much is that there's something inarguably good about life. It's like as soon as it's revealed that she's with child, it's like there's no argument. It's just so obviously like this is a good thing, and I feel like we've come disconnected from that, right? So you talk about why do we go to the underworld? Well, for us, the underworld, in that movie, the underworld has sort of eaten the world. So like they all live in the underworld, right? And so so this sort of land of the dead, because you can't like live in the land of the dead, right? You can visit, but to live in the land of the dead is not conducive to life. And so but it can get to the point where you can forget something is so obviously true and good, like a child, with life being pronatalism. And so like I think about that a lot, like in the sort of sophisticated world that I live in and teach in. I teach at a very nice boarding school. It's a great place. These are the people that are going to go off to fancy colleges and do the whole thing. But what I worry about is that we teach the kids like how to succeed in business, right? But we don't, but what about the actual important things? And so that kind of keeps me up at night.
Yeah, I found that as like the genius from his basement. The fundamental flaw we have going right now is that corporations are dragons. The only real responsibility they have is the fiduciary one to the shareholders, and unless it's built into their DNA that they have to have more concerns than just that, this is what we're going to get until the end of time. But speaking of time,
Yeah.
I remember the scene the most like they throw it right out in the front of Fifth Element, like the alien sticking his finger out the door and the door is closing in on it, and the dude's like, "You're running out of time," and he's like, "Time is of no importance. Only life is important."
Mm-hmm.
And so thank you for living with me on this stream today, Kale.
It was a pleasure, Grim, as always. Thanks.
This has been the General and the Gentleman stream. Kale and Grim. Bye, everybody.